and welcome to Let's Talk Diz, a show that gives you everything you need to know to help make your Disney vacation as magical as can be in just about 20 minutes. I'm your host, Jeff Coviello. With me each week is Disney Master Sandy from Easy Diz by Instant Impressions Travel Services. Sandy, how are you this week?
I am well, and Kior to all of our listeners, the Maury welcome from New Zealand.
Oh man, I was going to say you gotta clean that up because I don't know what that means, but you explained it for us. You are just back from New Zealand, which is kind of what leads us to our show tonight. It's going to be a multi-part episode because it was just too long of a trip, but you were on an adventure by Disney in New Zealand. That sounds just at face value incredible.
It really was. I mean, we talk about Adventures by Disney being these bucket list trips and amazing destinations filled with so many things. And one of their other little taglines that they talk about is bringing you out of your comfort zone. And I have to say, I just did so many things. And I was there for 15 days. The tour is an 11-day tour. I just can't even begin to count the number of memories, the number of incredible opportunities, activities. It was a phenomenal trip. And if it wasn't on your bucket list before, I hope by the end of our second episode, you're wondering why it wasn't on your bucket list, because there are some really neat things here.
Well, we mentioned it's Adventure by Disney. So we've done a bunch of stuff about Adventure by Disney, but for folks that may be new to the program or new to Adventure by Disney as a concept, give us a little bit of a breakdown of a little overview of what Adventures by Disney brings to the table.
You bet. So Adventures by Disney, by kind of their own definition, is small group guided tours to bucket list destinations around the world. They go to almost 50 destinations, only 2 of which have Disney theme parks. So no, Disney is not in 50 destinations around the world. And they have what we call land adventures, which was what I was just on. But we've also done episodes where I've been on one of their river cruises or their expeditions. Again, I am very fortunate with the number of adventures I have taken. My very first one about 12 years ago was one of 4 Italy itineraries they offer. I did Rome, Florence, and Venice. From there, I went to Costa Rica, New York City, Peru, California. They do an incredible one that includes Imagineering. I've done the Rhine River, the Danube. I went back to Peru, back to the Rhine River. I went to San Francisco, Norway, Portugal. I feel like I'm leaving something out.
We're crying for you as you leave one out here.
Adriatic expedition last year, and now New Zealand. So you can see they cover a great amount of destinations. There are some that are as little as 5 or 6 days. They did away with their weekends. Most of the tours are 7 days, but when they're such a big country like New Zealand or Australia and China, they are that 10, 11-day mark because there's just so much to see and do. And I'm not going to claim that I saw all of New Zealand, but in my 11 days, we were in 5 different resorts, a little bit crazy. So 5 different highlight towns in New Zealand: Auckland, Rotorua, Christchurch, Franz Joseph, and Queenstown. We were in North Island, South Island. We traveled by motor coach, ferry boat, train, plane. We really covered it all.
Well, you mentioned planes, trains, and automobiles once you were there, but let's kind of go back to the beginning. How did you get there, right? Because it's legitimately all the way around the world.
So I'm going to be honest. It was long. I decided that it was kind of my preparation for 13 months from now when I am going to Singapore to see that brand new awesome cruise ship that we just spoke about a couple of weeks ago and hit up Shanghai Disney. I am based in New Jersey, as we've talked about a couple of times, as are you.
Right.
So I flew out of beautiful Newark Airport a little over 5 hours out to LA, thanks to my good friends at United Airlines. And from there, I traveled Air New Zealand for a very long, my longest flight ever, 14 hours over to New Zealand on Air New Zealand. And I honestly wasn't sure how I was going to survive 14 hours. It's a really long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I ate, I slept, I read, I ate, I slept, I read, I did it some more and again and again. But I spent a little bit extra on my seat, and I did something that they call a sky couch. And it seems that a lot of these European international airlines either have Air New Zealand only is the only one with this sky couch. Other airlines call it a sleeper row. So you purchase your seat like a regular seat backing, good old economy, 3 people straight across normally. And after you buy your seat, you do this add-on. And the sky couch row, I added the other 2 seats in my row so nobody could sit there. And when I arrived, if I looked down by the legroom of the spot closest to the window, there was a big bag filled with linens. Because if you hit the button on the armrest, the footrest actually comes up from the bottom of the seats. It is not something you will find on your average plane if you go looking for it.
Right.
And the footrest actually comes all the way up, flush with the seat, and fills in all of the legroom. So picture this footrest that goes from the very front of your seat all the way to the seat back pocket. So you put all 3 of those up. You open that package of linens. There's a fitted sheet that goes over your 3-seat air couch, sky couch, and you've got pillows and a blanket in there. So they do say it can sleep up to 3 people. I will say I did walk up and down the aisle because I was kind of curious how it worked.
Yeah. I would have been too. Sure.
I saw some trying to make it work. I can't imagine how these people could have been comfortable. It works for 1 adult. In my mind, it works for 1 adult and 1 child.
Right.
It does not work for very tall people. I saw 1 couple sleeping as I went to the bathroom. His feet were in her face and vice versa. That was the only way they could make themselves fit. And
Sure.
I thought, you've got to be kidding me. But, you know, there were plenty of people that sat 3 or 4 across. It was a 343 plane, and they made it work. So definitely getting there is not logistically it's easy, but it is a long flight. And so even though there is a massive time difference, you lose an entire day going to New Zealand. I left here on a Wednesday afternoon and I arrived bright and early Friday morning.
Okay.
I do suggest, even though we did have people that arrived at 6, 7, 8, 9 a.m. on the first day of the tour, and the first thing isn't till 5 p.m. for dinner, if you can arrive early, definitely do it. There's plenty to see in Auckland, but also having that extra day to adjust really makes it easier to enjoy the tour.
So by arrive early, you mean if you're day 1 of your tour, you should get there before day 1 of the tour. Don't try to get there as the tour starts, is what you're saying.
Definitely. And again, I'm going to be very honest. We were a group of 24 people. We had 14 of the 24 arrive on that start day.
Got it. Okay.
But several others arrived early. The other tip that I will give you, most flights to New Zealand, especially from the East Coast, arrive at the ungodly hour of 5 to 8 a.m. And so when you now make it to your hotel somewhere between 7 and 9 a.m., guess what? Your room isn't ready because check-in isn't
Right.
until 3 p.m.
Yeah.
So I did for many of my travelers as well as myself, I booked a pre-night. Even though I wasn't going to be sleeping there that night, I wanted when I arrived at 6:30 in the morning to have a hotel room to go to. So consider booking that pre-night. Very carefully communicate with the hotel or let your travel agent communicate with the hotel, because if you don't arrive by midnight and you haven't communicated with them, they can give away your room.
Yeah, we don't need that. All right. So you said it was an incredibly long tour, an 11-day tour. You said correct, an 11-day adventure.
11
So
days.
let's try to break this down day by day. As you said, this is not going to be a one episode show. So let's start with day one, and I'll kind of try to pepper you through with some questions. Just kind of walk us through the itinerary day by day, starting with the first one.
You bet. So day one, as I said, is a pretty light day. Adventures by Disney does cover your transfers from the airport to the hotel. So you're greeted right away, brought to the hotel. It was in downtown Auckland. I couldn't have asked for a better location or a nicer hotel. We were right on the harbor. I had a harbor view room that when I looked out my window, I saw their sky tower. It was amazing.
Awesome.
It also meant that I was walking distance from anything I wanted. You want to go out to eat, you want to go touring, you could easily walk to everything. That's one of the things that I love about Adventures by Disney is that locations typically are in the city. Now, you'll hear later in my tour, one of the cities, I think my street is longer than their whole city, but you're always kind of where the action is so that you're not wasting time. I've read itineraries and talked to people with other tour groups, and they stay 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour outside of the city. It takes away from your time. So we did a beautiful welcome dinner right in the hotel, so nobody had to go far. All those glass windows opening onto the harbor. That's where we met our adventure guides, we met our fellow travelers, and we got an overview what the week was going to be like. So a relatively early dinner as some travelers were adjusting to the time change, and off to bed so that we could begin day two, which was jam-packed.
But still in the same city in
Still
Auckland.
in Auckland.
Okay. So what did you do for day two?
We started on our motor coach and we went to cooking school. We learned all about what makes cooking different in New Zealand. Some of it is just that they call things different names.
Right.
If you're not aware, one of the main things that is a product of New Zealand that they eat an incredible amount of is lamb.
Yep.
And so we learned how to prepare lamb. We did a salad, we did broccolini. So they did a cooking demonstration. They talked about how to spice things, why things are different there, how they prepare things. Then we broke into 4 different cooking groups. We had our little assignments. It took us a bit to cook our food. And then we made a buffet and we ate what we cooked. So that was our lunch on that day. It was a great start.
Cool.
After lunch, there were 2 choices. One of the things that I really like about Adventures by Disney is nobody is going to be forced to do anything. Obviously, if you feel like sitting at the hotel, go for it. But there's activities that are a little bit more adventurous, or in this case, things that maybe people who are prone to motion sickness don't want to do. Or I had somebody who recently had taken a bad fall and her doctor had advised her nothing with a lot of motion. So we did an America's Cup sailing experience. But if you didn't want to be on the ship, there was also the opportunity to go up in the Sky Tower. So we actually, a little different this time, one of the boats that they typically use was out of commission. So instead, we had 2 smaller boats that are used for the America's Cup, which was really neat because we created 2 teams and we were able to race each other like it was a true experience.
Oh, that's really fun. That's cool.
Guests had the opportunity to help raise the sails, to drive the boats. And we were dropped in the downtown area. And then we actually took our boats right into that harbor outside of our hotel.
Very cool.
If you didn't want to do the America's Cup, you could do the Sky Tower. Picture like Empire State Building kind of thing, or Seattle Space Needle. And one of the neat things about going up in the Sky Tower, not only did you get a great city view, but you could watch our 2 ships doing their America's Cup race.
Yeah, that's cool.
So we were able to get some great footage of that. If you're in the Sky Tower, there's also a great little bar and light bites place pretty high up, so you can get a great view. If you do the America's Cup sailing and you still want to do the Sky Tower, you can do it on arrival day. You can do it. There's a little bit of free time after the America's Cup. Again, with everything being so close, you can fit in everything you want.
Very fun.
We did have a little break, and then we headed out for the evening. And we went to the Auckland Zoo. And I know some of you, kind of like Animal Kingdom, are saying, really? You had to go all the way to New Zealand to go to a zoo and you're all adults?
Yes.
This was an adult exclusive tour. We really, when you think about it, it's like, really, we're going to the zoo? But again, it was Adventures by Disney. The zoo was shut down. It had closed for the day. We entered the zoo, and as we were walking, kind of reminded me of Animal Kingdom in a way. You had that long path that you walked down until you really saw anything in the zoo. And as we got to the end of the path, we were greeted by a group of 4 people from the Maori tribe doing a traditional Maori welcome dance.
Very cool.
So again, one of the things that Adventures by Disney works on is authenticity. They want to tell a story, but they don't want a made-up story. So the culture and the things in the land in all of their tours is really important. And I have to say, while I knew almost nothing about the Maori culture except for a few sentences that I had read prior, they're an amazing culture, and I was very touched by a lot of the things we learned about them, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later in the show. But we went through that welcome. Then we broke into 2 groups and had a private tour of the zoo. We got to see their kiwis, which is obviously the native animal to New Zealand. We saw eels and learned a lot of freaky facts about eels. I did not know how dangerous they are, how long they are, and that they both live in the water and can live on land. So we got to see some of these animals up close. We did a little bit of a tour. And then the elephant house at the zoo was converted many years ago from a true elephant house where they brought the elephants in at night into a restaurant and dining area and special event area. So we had our dinner in the elephant house.
I mean, that's not a typical zoo experience. So you led with we went to the zoo, but then all of that is really, really fun and dynamic. That's day 2. So we mentioned that this was definitely not going to be a one-show experience. We're not kidding, right? So let's segue to day 3 because we want to try to get halfway through the tour before we end tonight. So day 3, what happened?
Are you saying I'm talking too long?
I'm not. I'm saying you got lots of great stuff, but to try to fit it in one show would be impossible. So.
So I talked about 5 resorts. So this day 3 is when we did our first resort change. And again, one of the things about Disney is how seamless it is. You don't ever have to carry your bags, call a bellman, anything like that. You are given a time, you leave your bags outside your door. They magically are loaded on the motor coach. You will go out and do something for the day, so that by the time you get to your new resort, it is after check-in time and your room is waiting. Unlike that day 1 experience where I said you could be in the lobby, that will never happen. So day 3, we head to Rotorua, which was one of the days that I was really excited about. We did the Spellbound Glowworm Caves. So again, because of the size of our group, we divided into 2 groups. We hopped in this special van from the Glowworm people. We drove down the road onto this private property, down this switchback mountain that, again, they do warn you. I will warn you, if you're doing this tour and you're prone to motion sickness, you definitely need a patch or Dramamine for many parts of this trip. But then we donned our helmets with our lights, kind of like a little miner heading into the cave, and we went into the caves.
Wow.
And when we got a small distance into the cave, we were told in order to have the glowworms come out, we needed to shut our lights.
That's scary.
So here we are, all 14 of us, lights off. They allow one person in the back who's got a red light to keep it on to kind of show our way. The guide from the caves has a small flashlight that he uses to guide us down. And we know that the worms are in the cave, but they also like the water. So we've got to get down to the river that is running through the cave. And we did know in advance we'd be taking a boat ride. So we make our way to like the smallest dock that I have ever seen, this wooden dock in the middle of the cave, where the guide from the caves offers to do pictures. So either as a single, a couple, a small group, you got in and out of the boat. He did pictures. He used a special setting on his camera because it was dark and you could see almost nothing. And our pictures do an awesome job of showing the worms.
Wow.
We then all load up into the boat, and he says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the boat down the river, have your cameras out, take all the pictures you want. It's going to take your eyes another few minutes to adjust. You're going to see these worms. We're going to go down the river. We're going to come back up the river. When we get back to the top of the river, I'm going to ask you all to listen to me and put your phone away. There will be no phones, and we are going to go back down the river. Holy Hannah, the most amazing sight to be inside this cave on the water. You could hear a pin drop or an occasional camera click.
Sure.
And the whole cave is lit up brighter than the sky.
Wow.
Hundreds of thousands of these little worms that at the very bottom of the worm, they light up in the darkness.
That's cool.
It was like looking at a sky with thousands of lights.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing. So we got our 2 trips on the boat. We then hiked out of the cave, and then we went to a secondary cave that is all lit, and they walk us through understanding how they live, why they live, what kinds of wildlife used to live in these caves. So the 2 groups switched. Really, really incredible experience.
Yeah.
Then back on the van, back up the Switchback Mountain, back into our motor coach, and the rest of the way over to Rotorua, check into our new hotel. And there are times in the tour where you do have on your own time. That evening was on our own adventure. I had booked a dinner for my friends and I. We went to the Stratosphere, which was really neat. Again, one of those kind of high top towers. We took a gondola all the way up. It is a dirt bike path and a ski path, but we were able to take the gondolas up, have this dinner with 360 views overlooking a lake. Absolutely incredible buffet, great views. If you're doing this tour, I highly recommend grab an Uber. There's Uber all over this town, but there is not Lyft, one of those little things.
Well, that takes us to the end of, believe it or not, only day 3 of this experience that you've got there. We did preface this show that it was going to be a multi-part show, you know, in the interest of keeping the details authentic and as vivid as you've done just for the first couple days. I think we're going to stop here tonight and we're going to bring this topic back in a couple of weeks, because it is also the holiday season in Walt Disney World. We're going to have the Christmas party at the Magic Kingdom and Jollywood Nights coming to you next week. And then we'll kind of revisit this Adventures by Disney in New Zealand in a couple of weeks, as long as that works for you, Sandy, since you are the world traveler.
You bet. So maybe we should take a little break. I'll send you all hunting on Amazon for Hershey's big competitor in New Zealand. See if you can find a Whittaker chocolate bar. And if you can get one that's hokey pokey, yes, that is a food, you'll be in for a true New Zealand treat.
Well, I love it. I'm excited to hear about the rest of it. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for taking the trip, and welcome home. We're excited to see you stateside, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great.
That's a wrap this week on Let's Talk Diz. If anyone you know could benefit from this or any show, please share, have them like and subscribe. And don't forget to reach out to the folks at Easy Diz by Gibson and Preston's Travel Services for any Disney destination planning. Make it a great week, and as always, keep making memories.